Thank you, Scott and Scott. I want to thank each of you all for sticking with us. I think that we've got an exciting panel coming up. I'm Robert Hurt, the director for the Center for Law and Government here at Liberty University. Prior to coming to Liberty, I was in Congress for 3 terms and was in the state legislature for 9 years. So it's an honor to be here, being able to work with so many wonderful students. Our panel is entitled Making an Impact. And so we have 4 really special guests that are going to talk to you all a little bit about making an impact. It strikes me that in order to get this conversation started, you need to first think about why. Why is it important to make an impact? And then I hope we can talk a little bit about how you as students, as young people, can make an impact, because of course, in every way, you're the future for our country. In 1971, Liberty University was founded. When it was founded, it was called Lynchburg Baptist College. And after 6 years, 1977, the name was changed from Lynchburg Baptist College to Liberty Baptist College. Dr. Falwell, of course, his core mission, our core mission, is to train champions for Christ. And we take that most seriously. But I think in addition to that, Dr. Falwell was committed, as the name might imply, was committed to promoting and preserving the founding principles that have made this country what it is. And when I think about those principles, I think about principles of self-government, meaning that we don't work for the government works for us. I think about the concept of free markets. That is, that we as individuals get to decide what we buy or choose not to buy. We don't have the government telling us what we have to buy or can't buy. And then finally, the third concept that I think is really important, of course, is the rule of law, which says that as individuals, we make the laws, that the laws that exist because we express them, and that they apply to everybody, which was a little different, idea back in 1776. But I say all that to say that this university is committed to promoting those principles, and so we're delighted to have a panel that can talk a little bit about exactly why it's important that we care and that we engage and that we make an impact. So our first guest, I'm just going to go through very quickly and introduce Denver Riggleman, who is a member of Congress representing the 5th District. He was elected in 2018. There you go. Congressman Riggleman was in the Air Force, was a soldier. He went into business went into business for a number of years, and then late in life came to politics, and he'll talk a little bit about the why of that, and is now making an impact in Washington, D.C. Our second guest is somebody that I've known for a long time as a dear friend, is Ben Cline, who represents the 6th Congressional District. It is also, and I don't think we have time for us to sing happy birthday, but I think it's just as a personal note, it's interesting to note that he is a leap year baby. His birthday is February 29th, and he's now 11 3/4 as of today.
He doesn't look that old.
He doesn't look that old. Ben is a lawyer. Ben is a lawyer. He was in the state legislature for a period of 16 years. 16 years in the state legislature in the House of Delegates. He was then elected last fall to serve the 6th District in Congress. We are sitting in the 6th District right now, so we are in his district, and he's making an impact there. Our next guest is Dave Bratt. We all know Dave, former congressman. Dave is from Richmond and served for 2 terms in the United States Congress. He's an economist by trade, and we are really, really thrilled to have him here at Liberty University because he is our new dean of the business school, which will be opening. When will it be open? When will it be online? After graduation, we have the new business school building online, but very delighted to have him. And then our last guest is somebody that we all know has been here at Liberty University since about 2011, is our Dean of our Helms School of Government, somebody that I get to work with, the Center for Law and Government, has become a very dear friend. He served in the private sector. He served also in the federal government in both Department of Homeland Security as well as FEMA before coming to Liberty University and sharing his wisdom with our students. So we've got a great lineup here, and so let's get started. Denver, you know, as I said in our opening, I think for young people, especially here at Liberty University, where you have such a diet of political figures who come through here on a regular basis to share their experience and share their perspectives with folks, I think sometimes it's easy for young people to take politics for granted, to take being an elected official for granted. I think it's also easy sometimes just to ignore it altogether, and I think that we see that. I don't think we see that here so much, but to just ignore it altogether and not really appreciate why it is important to be engaged as a good citizen. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, how it is that you came to politics, especially after really a career in the Air Force and in the private sector as a small businessman.
Yeah, sure, and thank you. And hi, everybody. I never even thought about politics really my entire life. I'm 48 years old now. I know I look much younger, but I'm 48 years old now. Had an Air Force career. I was a Mustang, so I was enlisted and commissioned. I was in Air Force intelligence, counterterrorism, counterintelligence, big data, and actually was building technologies for special operations overseas. So I had a pretty fun life before I actually even thought about getting into politics, and started a company. I was a CEO of an intelligence company for the Department of Defense. So my whole life was really not politics at all, but being behind the door, supporting our country, and doing things that I thought were pretty fun. Even with service in the military, I don't know if there's people here who are going to go in the military, they're in ROTC, or they're looking forward. I heard somebody hooting somewhere, but and somebody screaming. But it's an amazing service, but it's different than politics. So what happened was I sold my company in 2012 and took my wife and daughters to Scotland to celebrate the sale of my company. We had come from nothing. I had started with food stamps, not only as a kid, but with my family. And all of a sudden, I found out that I was living the American dream. Served in the military, started my own company, sold it. So we're in Scotland, and I asked my wife, and I told her something. I said, you've been following me around for 20 years. What do you want to do? What's the one thing you want to do? And she goes, I want to be a manufacturer of chemicals that people can ingest to make them feel different. So I thought that was pretty amazing that she wanted to be a distiller. So, yeah, I know, that was pretty good, wasn't it? So we got 50 acres in Nelson County, and I built a manufacturing plant from scratch. And here's what I want to tell everybody here. Sometimes you don't get involved with politics. Politics gets involved with you. And when you're looking at trying to build something from scratch, you find out there's two forces working against you. You find out that there's the government with incredible overreach and the ability to almost employ violence against you to get you to do something. And there's also cronyism and certain types of bad lobbyists that are actually trying to use the government to force you into a position where they're picking winners and losers. Being an entrepreneur is actually what got me into politics. Fighting government is actually what got me into politics. I'm actually here the first time, because I know we don't have a lot of time, is I actually got tackled physically in my parking lot when I was building my distillery. VDOT, everybody loves the Virginia Department of Transportation, so I don't want to, you know, take anything from that. We had just put in our curbs, and they had a stick, and they measured it and said it was 1 inch too tall to pass inspection. So I got a little angry, and I started marching over. I guess I used to be a bouncer. I was the shortest bouncer in the history of Virginia, but I used to be a bouncer. So I'm walking over to the VDOT inspector, and I actually got tackled by my operations manager because he said, Denver, and it was a physical tackle, like, you can't get mad, you can't do this, you know, don't yell at this guy. So I want to tell all of you here is this. First of all, don't try to attack any government officials. Number two, if you're going to get involved, make sure you do. And here's the last thing I want to tell you. I had a lobbyist sit me down, and he said this, and when you go home tonight, think about this comment. He told me, Denver, if you're not at the dinner table, you're on the menu. So that's really why I'm here, is I don't want to be on the menu. So as you're going forward in life, do the best you can to serve, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Congressman Klein, you came to politics at a little younger age, and you've been a lawyer, practicing law, prosecutor, and then we're in the state legislature for a period of 16 years. Obviously, there's a big difference between serving in Washington and serving in Richmond. But can you talk a little bit about what drew you to elected office, and again, why it's important for these young people to be engaged and care?
Absolutely. It's critical to be involved right now. And as we heard earlier from one of the earlier speakers, it's not the presence of darkness that we need to be worried about, it's the absence of light. And we all need to answer God's call to serve. And there are different ways that we can all serve. We can serve in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, private sector, public sector. Public service was attractive to me early on. I interned for our previous I worked for our previous Congressman, Bob Goodlatte, and he really was the model of a public servant, always involved in his community, finding out what he could do to make government work for the people instead of the other way around, as you put it. Because government gets in the way all too often, and there are those out there who will use government for their own ends and for ends that are harmful to whether it's families or communities. You have to be prepared to step up and push back on those who would abuse government and use it to either increase involvement in your daily lives, try and take control away from you, take control away from your families, take control away from your communities. So that's what I've been doing, getting involved in public service as a way to keep control over our lives, our communities, and make sure that government doesn't interfere.
And Congressman Klein, so of course, for those who are not from Virginia, we have a citizen legislature that meets in Richmond 2 months out of the year. It's limited in scope and jurisdiction, and they go to work and they get their work done on time, they balance their budget. Then you go from there to Washington, where you never balance the budget and you never end anything. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Well, and Washington is a bubble of its own kind. There's nothing like it. Nothing happens, nothing moves. Everything is, but it's this giant sucking sound of control and tax dollars and energy that we need to find a way to break the cycle. We need to find a way to make it look more like Richmond, where we work, we have jobs. Denver's got his business. I ran a law practice up in Rockbridge County, and you know what? At the end of the session, we go home, and we just live with our families and go to work, and government is not too intrusive. We need to take more of Richmond up to Washington, because Washington is just way too, the gravitational pull is just too extreme right there.
So, Congressman Bratt, so obviously you served in Congress for 2 years. You, like Denver, went from the private sector, so to speak, into the frying pan directly without any background in elective office. What did you find the challenges to be? And then I'd also like for you to, because you are an economist, talk a little bit about the free market system, and why is that important, especially when we hear from, as we talked about on the stage earlier today, you have members of Congress who are openly supportive of socialist policies. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I agree with your opening remarks. And what got me there was first principles. That's why I wanted to run for Congress. And then, of course, the first principle, and sometimes politicians don't give enough recognition, but God led me into politics, and now God has led me to liberty, and I thank God every day to be here with all the students out there, and so God bless you all. And then God puts passions and callings and vocations into your hearts all differently. God put a passion for economics and ethics into my heart way back when, probably 25 years ago. And I looked out at the world, and I still look out at the world, and I look at communist China is moving toward free markets and growing at 10% a few years ago. And the United States of America, the greatest country on the earth, is moving towards socialism and was growing at 1% a few years ago. And so you say, how in the world can this happen? How in the world are we losing our first principles when it comes to economics and free markets, et cetera? And the answer is obvious. We're losing our first principles across the board. God, religion, the rule of law, freedom in general, free markets. And so to the students here, I encourage you all to dig in your studies here. Don't just check off the courses as you go through the government school, the law school. Dig into those courses and study and examine who is defending the first principles you believe in, right? Who's defending the First Amendment? Who's defending freedom of religion? Who's defending your freedom of speech on campus? And who's defending the Second Amendment? Who's defending the Constitution? Who's defending God in the public square? And then who's destroying it and deconstructing it? Dig into that and study that. That will determine the future course of this country. And I see some young people nodding, and that's why I love being here. And so finally, I'll just give you a word of encouragement in closing also. When you do study all that, you will find the history of nations, every nation on earth, every theology, every philosophy, you know, there might be a couple exceptions, has always acknowledged up until about 40 years ago that God is the first principle and the foundation for your personal life and our public life. Every system of thought. I grew up with that. We all grew up with that. It wasn't even in question. Now you are living in a unique worldview that's just upside down. And so I just leave you with the words of encouragement, right? Just always remember God has always been and always will be the first principle, the total foundation for your lives and for this country. And so pray and run for Congress, some of you, and we'll all support you in that, and God bless you.
Great, thank you. So Dean Miller, you may be, some might say, well, Dean Miller is the smartest person on the stage because he's never, he's never been elected to office.
I ran and I lost, so no, not never again.
But you know, obviously you have a different perspective as the dean of the Helms School of Government, and all the great work that goes there in educating young people about governments. And what's at the very nature of government, and that is a relationship between the governed and those who do the governing. I guess my question for you is you know, what do you say to your students who don't, you know, I know there are a lot of Helms students here, maybe some students that are not from Helms School. What do you say to encourage your students to demonstrate why it is important to be engaged? And you have the benefit of looking at it, I think, from an academic standpoint, a historic standpoint. If you look at things and how they've changed over the years, why is it important?
Well, I think first of all, I want to echo what Congressman Brad has pointed out, and that the calling that's placed on your life is important. It's really important for you to know what it is that energizes you, what gets you up in the morning, because I've found in my own experience that when you go through the door that the Lord opens for you, the path is made straight. And so I see my responsibility as the dean of the Helms School of Government to equip those people who feel called to public service. Not everyone is called to it, but we all are called to some form of service. And if it's going to be in the public square, if it's going to be in government, then we want to make sure that you've been trained and equipped with what you need, not only in terms of actual information, but experiences as well. One of the things I really like about what we're doing here today, it's not enough for you to see things or hear things in a classroom. I think it's important for you to have these experiential opportunities that expose you to some of the issues of the day. You know, we were talking at one point about some of the things we're dealing with in Virginia. We ended the commemoration yesterday of Black History Month, and I think it's safe to say it's been a difficult one for the state of Virginia. And when you look at some of the issues that have brought up, the revelations of past racially charged misdeeds, the things that are stirred up in the same year that we're celebrating the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first slaves in Jamestown, you're confronted with the dissonance there and saying to myself, what in the world can we do to encourage people who are called to public service to tackle tough issues like that one? How do we deal with issues of reconciliation? How do we deal with issues of the economy and making sure that it is really responsive to everyone, that everyone benefits? So find your calling, walk through the open door, and let those who are putting your life to train and equip you help you build what you need to go out into the world. And most importantly, make sure that you have your center well established. One of the reasons we integrate biblical principles into the information we give you is that the information we give you is knowledge, but the biblical integration is wisdom. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but without wisdom, it's ineffective. And so it's very important for us to realize that we want to give you both knowledge and wisdom for you to truly go out and be champions for Christ in the public square.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you have a student that comes to you and says, Dean Miller, I'd like to learn more about what it means to be in government or to play a role, what do you tell them? What are some of the practical things that our students today can be thinking about if they're interested in getting involved?
Well, the first thing I would do is ask them what aspect of government most energizes them, because we offer training in everything from criminal justice, the law enforcement side of government. We offer training in public administration. How many people realize that most government jobs are not in running for elected office? It's the administrators, the managers, and others that make sure that the mechanisms of government are working every day from the local level all the way up to the federal level. That's where most of the jobs are. So if you're into public administration, if that's your gift, we want to build you up to perform those kinds of duties. If you truly are interested in public office, we want to train you in how to effectively run a campaign. What does it take for you to raise money, to build a campaign staff, to have professional help? Obviously, these gentlemen were more successful at it than I was, but it's important for you to be able to know what it takes to run for public office. It's not an easy thing to do. I can honestly say it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And you learn a lot, though, from doing it. And so one of the things I try to do is impart my experience in doing that to my students. And then, of course, if you're interested in advocating for a particular issue, if there's some issue that really burns inside of you and you want to take that issue and be a champion for it, then we're going to teach you how to be an advocate, how to effectively communicate your ideas, how to effectively reach people, how to build alliances. And these things don't have to happen within the context of an elected office or a government agency. There are numerous public policy advocacy groups in all kinds of issues that you can get involved in. I mean, I've made the choice of being involved with nonprofits that are related to trying to bring black and white Christians together to meet needs in the local community here in Lynchburg, and by showing Christians together regardless of race, to show what heaven is supposed to look like.
Yeah, nice.
And so it's really important for you to realize that public service takes many forms, and what we want to do is know what it is that drives you and then point you in the right direction to be able to do it.
That's awesome. So Congressman Riggleman and Congressman Klein, just to kind of wrap up here, you know, one of the things that I loved about being in politics was working with young people, both on the campaign side as well as in Washington, where you find that the whole place is run by young people. Do you all have opportunities like that? Do you look for young people to come, and how important do you think that is? If they're interested in getting involved in politics or in government, how easy is it?
I think it's probably the most important thing. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I think without the young people in my campaign, and I like to think of myself as also a young person, Robert, so thank you very much. But with the other young people in my campaign, I think it's very important that we push forward. My daughters are 26, 25, and 22. My oldest, I'm not young. My oldest daughter runs our distillery in Virginia. My second daughter runs our other location in Pennsylvania. My third daughter wants to go to the Batten School of Public Policy at UVA because she wants to fight human trafficking and sex trafficking through public policy, which is what, you know, being counterintelligence, counterterrorism, you want to fight bad guys. I think all the young people out here you need to go fight the bad guys. And those bad guys are sometimes on the other side of you ideologically.
Amen. Ben?
Yeah, we've got lots of opportunities, whether it's serving God through interning in the public sphere, in the faith sphere, but for our office, we've got district offices where you can learn about constituent services, how to help constituents who are having issues with the federal government. In the Washington offices, there are internships where you can learn about the policies that our government is putting forward and how you can help influence those, or the campaign side. But there are always opportunities for young people, and they are the lifeblood of everything we do in public service.
I just want to second that. I've never been at a university that has as many opportunities for internships in any area of endeavor as this one. And I think that Congressman Bratt has already learned that there are numerous places for you to go. And so if you're a freshman or sophomore, it's not too early to think about what it is you'd like to do in the way of an internship, because we want to send our best and brightest out there, not only to gain experience, but to show people what the students of Liberty University can do to move change in all areas of endeavor. So if you haven't thought about internships, I encourage you to look into them. I was talking to Congressman Klein. He's got openings. Apply. Just get out there and really do the things that you can do to bolster your experiential learning opportunity.
All right, I think our time is up. I want to first of all, thank President Falwell and Scott Lamb for the being able to put something like this together for you all and for Liberty University. I think we're all honored to be a part of this panel today. I want to give a special thanks to all four of our panelists, and I think probably we owe a special thanks and special prayer for Congressman Riggleman and Congressman Klein, as I guess next week you go back to fight the war. But with that, I want to conclude, and I want to thank you very much. And I think it's now time. I'm going to send it to Sam Stone to take us from here.